Good evening, everyone. Hope everybody is keeping well. So as promised in my previous video, I'm going to do a ranking of all my favourite Beatles albums from least favourite to favourite. In my previous video I did all the Oasis albums, and in this one it's the Beatles. So as I said in my previous video, the Beatles are my favourite band of all time, and I'm sure many would agree, the greatest band of all time. I mean, I don't think there'll ever be a band like them ever again, and there's never been a band that's ever matched them in terms of all the songs they did and all the albums they made, you know. And 60 years later they're still more popular now than they've ever been. Incredible, really. And this list was really hard to compile because I love every Beatles album. As with the Oasis albums, I love all the Oasis albums. The Beatles, every album is just incredible, you know. Each album has just got so many incredible songs on them. There's obviously some albums which I prefer more than others, but I made a list anyway. So if I had to pick in order all my favourite Beatles albums from least favourite to favourite, so yeah, I've made the list, and so let's get started. So just to say, I haven't included in the list past masters, and that's purely because obviously it was released in the late 80s and it was compiled for a reason, which is that it gets together all the singles which the Beatles released in their career, which didn't appear on any official Beatles album. And so I haven't ranked it in the list, but I've still chosen my favourites. Beatles song, and also my favourite Beatles cover, and my least favourite Beatles song and my least favourite cover. And I've done that for both Volume 1 and Volume 2, or on this reissue from 2009. It's just Disc 1 and Disc 2. So on Volume 1, if I had to pick my favourite song off Volume 1, it's I Feel Fine. It's a great early Beatles song. I love John's vocal on that, and Ringo's drumming is great as well, and a great guitar solo from George in the middle, and obviously the harmonies as well. You know, it's one of my favourite early Beatles songs, that one, and one of the first songs, as we all know, to feature feedback on a record. And then my favourite cover version, Paul absolutely kills it on the vocals, and it's Long Tall Sally, Little Richard number. You know, full of energy and full of excitement. He sings it absolutely spot on, kills it. And so that's my favourite cover version. My least favourite Beatles song, even though I still like it, is Thank You Girl, which is a good early Beatles song and it's quite charming, but obviously I prefer other songs to that one more. And my least favourite cover version on Volume 1, Sorry Ringo, is Matchbox, Carl Perkins' song. He does a decent job on the vocals, but overall I find it a bit painful to listen to, that one. So that's my least favourite one. And my favourite one on Volume 2 is We Can Work It Out. We Can Work It Out is one of my favourite Beatles songs ever. I love Paul's positive attitude and hopefulness in the verses and the chorus, and then John coming in on the bridge and brings down the tone a little bit, and the harmony in the bridge is just beautiful. Yeah, a really great joint Lennon and McCartney song, that one. And my least favourite is, even though it's not really a song and it's just messing around, is You Know My Name, Look Up the Number. Although I like Brian Jones' saxophone solo at the end, but obviously it's just a joke song really. But my least favourite song on that one, even though it was on Let It Be, but on this album it's the Wildlife version from 1968, which is a bit faster and sped up. Is a bit faster and it's also in a higher key and it's across the universe. I do prefer the version on Let It Be, which is a bit slower and has the strings on it. This version is a bit too fast and John sounds a bit like a chipmunk, in my opinion, on that version. So that's my least favourite. So, onto the official list. And at the bottom, unsurprisingly, even though I still like it, is Yellow Submarine. Now, it was obviously an album which was only a contractual agreement by the Beatles, and it contains Yellow Submarine and All You Need Is Love, which was already on. Yellow Submarine was on Revolver and All You Need Is Love was on Magical Mystery Tour, but it's got 4 new songs on it. And so my favourite Beatles song on this is Hey Bulldog. John, his vocal on that, he just absolutely kills it, and George's guitar solo is brilliant in that. You can tell that he's using a Gibson SG in that as well, and the video as well is great. And I love the banter between John and Paul towards the end. So that's my favourite one, and one of my favourite lesser known Beatles songs, because it's not a song that many people talk about, or I might be wrong on that, but yeah, Hey Bulldog is my favourite. And my least favourite is All Together Now, which is effectively a very simple song, but a good sing-along. But yeah, that's my least favourite. And I've also picked my favourite George Martin piece and my least favourite George Martin piece. I actually really like the George Martin Orchestra on side 2. I find it quite relaxing to listen to, and it's nice to hear it. And it's obviously music from the film. So my favourite one is Sea of Time. I think there's some really nice orchestra and violins in that one. And my least favourite, even though I still like it, is Sea of Holes. And so that's number 13. And so at number 12 is Please Please Me. Now, you know, bands now, I mean, who would record an album now in a whole day? Don't think anyone would now, you know. And this was recorded in one 12-hour session on 11th of February 1963. I mean, you know, and there's just so many, you know, great songs and great cover versions of this. So, as with past masters, I've chosen my favourite cover version and my favourite Beatles song and least favourite cover version, least favourite Beatles song. So my favourite cover version and also my favourite song off the whole album, unsurprisingly, is Twist and Shout. I mean, John, his vocal on that, I mean, you can hear him tearing his vocal cords out, you know, and it's a great last song as well on the album, and you know, full of energy, full of excitement, just absolutely kills it on that. And my favourite Beatles song is I Saw Her Standing There. You know, a great opening song with Paul's counting at the start. You know, it just drives along perfectly. You know, and a great guitar solo by George, and great bass line from Paul, which is the same bass line as that Chuck Berry song, which was it? I'm Talking About You. You know, just a great early Beatles song. And my least favourite is Love Me Do. A least favourite Beatles song is Love Me Do. I actually prefer the single version with Ringo on it. The version on here with Andy White is good, but I do prefer it when Ringo's on it. And it's a great song, and it was obviously the Beatles' first ever single, and it started everything off, but I do prefer other Beatles songs to that one because it's a fairly simplistic song. And my least favourite cover version, even though I still quite like it, but I find it a bit cheesy, is A Taste of Honey. Paul's vocal. Paul sings on that one. So that's number 12. Number 11 is with the Beatles. Now, this album was obviously released on the same day JFK got assassinated, and you can definitely tell it's an album that has really gone up a notch in terms of the songwriting. And for me personally, I think this album has got some of John Lennon's best ever vocals, you know, in songs like It Won't Be Long, All I've Got to Do, and even Little Child. Please Mr. Postman, You Really Got a Hold of Me, and Not a Second Time, and Money has got for me personally some of his best ever vocals, I think. But my favourite Beatles song is All My Lovin', which is just a great Paul song, great melody, great words, you know, and a great Chet Atkins style solo in the middle from George, and John's rhythm as well is a highlight, and it's not easy to play either, is that rhythm. It's deceptively hard, is that. And my favourite cover version is Money. It's a bit like Twist and Shout as that one, you know, except he's not tearing his vocal cords out as much as he did on Twist and Shout, but John sings that perfectly on Money, you know, full of energy and excitement, as I've said earlier, you know, just great. And my least favourite Beatles song is I Want to Be Your Man, which, yeah, it's a good song, but yeah, I think that's my least favourite. I do like the Stones version of that as well. And my least favourite is Devil in Her Heart, which I still like, but it's my least favourite, is that one. So that's number 11. Number 10 is Let It Be. And this is the remix from 2021 by Giles Martin, which I did really like, actually, the remix of that. So, my favourite song from this one, even though it was actually hard picking a favourite song because I do love all of them, but I do love I've Got a Feeling. I love the transition of Paul into John's verses in the middle, and the drums and guitar. Yeah, it's a great song, is that one. And if it hadn't been for that one, I would have chosen Get Back as my favourite, but I think I prefer I've Got a Feeling a little bit more, but Get Back is a great song anyway. My least favourite is, I could have easily picked Dig It, but it's only like a short snippet of a song, is that one really. So it is my least favourite, but if I had to pick my least favourite full-length song, it would be Dig a Pony, which is a good song, but the lyrics are a little bit hit and miss in that one. But it's a fairly good song though, Dig a Pony. And just to say as well, I love the Get Back documentary. I've watched it so much ever since it was released last year. I just think it's absolutely unbelievable, incredible. The best Beatles thing to come out for a lot of years, I think, ever since Anthology, really, I think, you know. And obviously for years and years, the original Let It Be film was edited to show the band, you know, breaking up and having arguments and bust-ups and that, which it does show in the film, on the documentary still, but it's only like really minor arguments, really. and you can tell all of them were in different places, and you can tell it was reaching the end of the line because, you know, John's in his own little world on that documentary because he's with Yoko, and he's a bit of a lazy bugger really in that documentary. I mean, you can tell Paul is, you know, driving it along, and George is getting frustrated because he's trying to show his songs, and John and Paul are shown much interest, but it's great though. I absolutely love that documentary. If you haven't seen it, it's on Disney Plus still, and I think it's released on Blu-ray now. I absolutely recommend it to any Beatles fan to watch that because it is brilliant. So that's number 10. Number nine is Beatles For Sale. I think this is a really, really underrated Beatles album. I think it's got some real gems on this album. And I mean, you can see clearly on the cover that all of them are tired and worn out from excessive touring. But to make an album like this in the midst of touring and doing so much stuff is remarkable, really. And yeah, so it was actually quite hard picking a favourite song from this as well, because all of them I do really like. But I think if I had to pick my favourite, it's No Reply. And it's a fairly downbeat song overall from John, but a great one. And I love that lift, excuse me, I do love that lift into the bridge where it just increases a little bit in volume and then it comes back down in the verses again. It's great, that. And then Paul's harmony in the middle is brilliant. So that's, if I had to pick my favourite, it'd be that one, I think. And my least favourite is What You're Doing, which I still love. I love Paul's vocal on that, and I think it's quite an infectious tune, is that one. My favourite cover version is Words of Love, which is a Buddy Holly song, and that's like note for note perfect, is that one. And my least favourite cover version, Sorry Ringo, again, is Honey Don't. He sings it well, but it's just his talking in the middle of it, you know, which is a bit cringy, but it's good. I don't mind it, but if I had to pick my least favourite, it'd be that one. So that's number 9. Number 8, which was an EP in Britain, but a full-length album in America. It's Magical Mystery Tour. Now, this album, I mean, my God, I mean, there's so many great songs off this, you know, and oh, it's just amazing album is this. But my favourite one, without a shadow of a doubt, is Strawberry Fields Forever, which is one of my absolute favourite Beatles songs. It's an absolute masterpiece, is that. And obviously it's 2 versions spliced together, but it's just an absolute masterpiece, is that. I love Ringo's manic drumming towards the end. Yeah, absolute masterpiece, is that. One of John Lennon's finest songs, and a great music video as well. And my least favourite, even though I do like it, is Blue Jay Way, which I find is quite a haunting song, I think. Quite a spooky song, that one. So it'd be that one, but I mean, every song on this. I mean, I Am the Walrus is a masterpiece. And Hello Goodbye is brilliant. You know, Baby You're a Rich Man has got a great bass line in it, and Penny Lane is a classic as well. Just amazing. Absolutely in their prime at this point in 1967. Obviously the film wasn't great, but it has its moments. There they are. So yeah, So that's number 8. Number 7 is Sgt Pepper, and this again is the remix from 2017 by Giles Martin. It's not one of my favourite Beatles albums, is this. I do prefer other Beatles albums to this one, but I can see why it's lauded as a masterpiece, because it's so different and unlike any other Beatles album, and unlike any other album really ever released by anyone. You know, it was so different and so innovative for its time. And I love watching documentaries and interviews about it as well. You know, the fact that it was all done on a 4-track tape machine in 1967 is just unbelievable, you know. And the reason why they could add overdubs obviously was they would fill up all the 4 tracks and then bounce it all down into one track, and then have room for more overdubs. And my favourite song, unsurprisingly, is A Day in the Life. It's a great joint Lennon and McCartney song, and I love the orchestra in it, and you know, great drumming by Ringo. It always sends shivers up and down my spine every time I listen to it. And then that crashing piano chord at the end, which goes on for about 40 seconds, and then that tape loop at the end, not the tape loop, the run out groove, which obviously when some people had it on the original vinyl in 1967, it would go on to the run out groove and it would play endlessly, and it features on this obviously, but it's faded out. But it's, yeah, so that's my favourite one. And my least favourite is being For the Benefit of Mr. Kite, which is, it's a good song, but a bit of its time, if you ask me, that one. I mean, yeah, it's got a lot of great songs on this album. I mean, you know, Getting Better, you know, She's Leaving Home, you know, John's backing vocal on that alongside Paul's lead vocal on that is beautiful. Within You, Without You, yeah, it's a great album, it's that one. But that's number 7. Number 6 is Abbey Road, which it might surprise some, which might surprise some people, but for me, this is number 6, and this again is the remix from 2019 that Giles Martin did. For me personally, it was an album really that didn't need a remix really, because it was originally done in stereo anyway in 1969, and it was recorded really well on 8 tracks on to an 8-track tape machine in 1969, and so it didn't really need a remix. But overall, as a remix, it's actually pretty good actually. But I can understand why many people would listen to the old stereo, and I think it's an absolutely great Beatles album. But there is some dips and holes on this album, I think personally, and I absolutely love the medley. I think that is one of the finest pieces of music ever assembled in the history of music, I think. You know, it's just great. Golden Slumbers is brilliant in that, and then Carry That Weight, and then the end with all the guitar solos from John, Paul and George is brilliant. The first side for me is a bit of a roller coaster for me, and if I had to pick my favourite, it would be Something, George's song. I mean, definitely one of George's, you know, best ever songs is that one. Incredible song about Pattie Boyd, as we all know, and a great guitar solo in the middle, and great vocal from him as well. Yeah, I think that's my favourite one of the whole album. And my least favourite, which wouldn't surprise a lot of people, is Maxwell's Silver Hammer. a song that is, yeah, very silly and not one of Paul's best, is that one. So that's number 6, Abbey Road. Number 5 is Help. This album has got a lot of great Beatles moments on it, and some of the finest Beatles moments, if you ask me, I think. And a great film, obviously. One of my favourite films, and it's got so many great songs on this. And so it was hard picking my favourite on this one, but if I had to pick, it'd be Ticket to Ride. I mean, is it one of the first examples of heavy metal, that song? I mean, some people might say so, and some people wouldn't. But it's just, yeah, a great Beatles song is that one. John's vocal on that is brilliant, and great drums by Ringo, and great guitar work from Paul as well. He does all the lead guitar work on that one. So Ticket to Ride is my favourite. My least favourite is a song that John Lennon famously hated, and that was It's Only Love. I think it's not a bad song. I quite like it. I think it could have been extended out a little bit more, I think, because it's quite a short song. And if more care had been taken over the lyrics, I think it would have been a better song. But I quite like it. I think it's an alright song. It's Only Love. My favourite cover version is I think I'll have to go with Act Naturally. Yeah, I think it'd be Act Naturally that I'd go for. I think Ringo does a great job on that. Paul's harmony with him in the chorus is great, and George's lead guitar work in that is great, and Ringo does a top job on that, as I said. And my least favourite cover version is Dizzy Miss Lizzie. John kills it as he did on Money and Twist and Shout on the first 2 albums, but it's just the guitar riff gets a little bit annoying after a while on that cover. But John's vocal's great, as I say. But that's my least favourite cover version of this album. So that's number 5. So number 4 is A Hard Day's Night, and it's my favourite Beatles film ever. I can quote that film all day long. I absolutely love it. It really showcases all their personalities and their humour. You know, absolutely brilliant film, and it's just an absolutely great album from start to finish. Is this album? You know, it's all original songs, all Lennon and McCartney songs. So it was really hard picking a favourite song from this one. But if I had to pick, it would be, and it's quite a lesser known one actually, but I absolutely love it. It's You Can't Do That. Again, John's vocal is just great on that, and he does the guitar solo as well in the middle, which is great. Great backing vocals by Paul and George, and a great bridge section in the middle as well. But as I say, I do love all of them, but if I had to pick my favourite, it'd be that one. If it hadn't been that one, I would have chosen I'll Be Back, which I think is a great song as well. I love the transition of major chords to minor chords in the middle. My least favourite is I'll Cry Instead. You know, it's a fairly short song and quite a simple song, but not a bad song. I think it's a good song, but my least favourite, I think, is that one, I'll Cry Instead. And so into the top 3 now. Number 3 is Revolver, and this is the recent remix by Giles Martin, which sounds incredible, absolutely incredible. I know some people would some people would choose the mono version of this album, but for me personally, it's an album which needs all the space in the spectrum, because there's so many guitar parts and, you know, backing vocals. It just needs all that space in the stereo field, I think. And so it's an album I listened to in stereo, and it was definitely an album which needed a stereo remix, in my opinion. And this remix is just brilliant. Giles Martin did an absolutely top job on that. And although I will say, She Said is the only one out of all the remixes that I'm not mad on, because for some reason I'm not sure if many people have listened to it, but on the remix version, it almost sounds like it's missing an extra guitar, and it sounds a bit empty on that new remix. And so I prefer the older version of that one from the 2009 or the 1987 CD, because it has that extra guitar and it sounds more full. And so my favourite song, without a shadow of a doubt, is Tomorrow Never Knows. It's a song that I will never, ever, ever get tired of hearing. You know, it was just so ahead of its time, and it still sounds, you know, fresh now in 2022. I mean, I can only imagine what it must have been like in 1966 to hear a song like that for the first time. I mean, it must have been absolutely mind-blowing. And yeah, and obviously the story behind it all, you know, all the tape loops in the studio and how it was all made and everything is just absolutely unbelievable and mind-boggling. And it was an album, and it was a song that which could never be remade again, because it was so spontaneous. You know, even George Martin said that. But it's yeah, Tomorrow Never Knows is my favourite. And my least favourite is, even though I have a soft spot for it, Sorry Ringo, again, is Yellow Submarine. It's a song that I do like, but it's not one I regularly listen to, because it's a bit of a children's song, really, is that one. But I love the sound effects in it and everything. But yeah, Yellow Submarine is my least favourite. But it's just an absolutely incredible album overall. I mean, it's got just every song on it is just incredible. You know, Taxman, Eleanor Rigby, I'm Only Sleeping, Good Day Sunshine, and Your Bird Can Sing, I Wanted to Tell You, Got to Get You Into My Life. Just an absolutely classic Beatles album. And if it wasn't for this album, I don't think Britpop would have existed. I mean, Noel Gallagher has repeatedly said that this is one of his favourite Beatles album. You know, it's got so many songs which have influenced a lot of Britpop songs. So I think it was a very important album in the Britpop movement in in the 90s. And so at number 2 is the White Album. And this again is the remix from 2018 that Giles Martin did, and he did a great job on it. But I'm sure many people have said as well that if they were trapped on a desert island and they had to pick one album to take with them to listen to, it'd be the White Album. And I can see why, because it's just got so many songs on it, and it's got everything on it, really. You know, so many songs and so many wide range of styles, but it's just an incredible album. I mean, back in the USSR, Dear Prudence, Happiness is a Warm Gun, Julia, Birthday, Helter Skelter, Sexy Sadie, Cry Baby Cry. It's just got so many. It's a very varied album, as Paul McCartney once said, and so many styles, and it's just a brilliant. It's so original, I think, is the best way to put it. I mean, it's got its fair share of filler tracks on it, but even I love all the filler songs on it. But it's just a brilliant, it's just a classic Beatles album. It's just brilliant. And so if I had to pick my favourite song, it would be While My Guitar Gently Weeps. One of George Harrison's, greatest ever songs. And a great guitar solo, as we all know, which was played by Eric Clapton. It's just a brilliant, just an absolutely brilliant song. And my least favourite overall is Obla-Dee Obla-Da, which, like Yellow Submarine, for me personally, is a bit of a nursery rhyme. And so, yeah, it's not one that I listen to regularly. But absolutely classic album, definitely my second favourite Beatles album. And so, number one, as I'm sure you guessed, is Rubber Soul. 1965 and 1966 is my favourite Beatles period. It's when they had the best haircuts, in my opinion, and the stuff that they were churning out in this period was just incredible. And this album, as we all know, was the turning point for the band in terms of what they could do in the studio, taking the songwriting up to a new level. And there's just so many great songs off this album, and some of my favourite Beatles songs. So my favourite song is definitely In My Life, and one of John Lennon's greatest ever songs, and great vocals and great harmonies, and the complex drumming from Ringo is brilliant, and that little harpsichord solo from George Martin in the middle is genius. Yeah, and one of my favourite Beatles songs ever. So that's my favourite. And my least favourite, even though I still like it, and another song John Lennon famously hated, was Run For Your Life. Quite a simplistic song, and the lyrics are a bit dark, as we all know, but yeah, I think that's my least favourite. So there we go. And I've just dropped all my albums. So that's my list of all my favourite Beatles albums. Somebody suggested in the comments doing a ranking of Jake Bugg, which I'll get on doing. I'm going to take a break from this and go back to doing a few covers in the weeks coming, but I will do a review on Jake Bugg and my favourite albums by him and my least favourite, and I'll have a few stories to tell about him as well. And so that's my ranking of all my favourite albums by the Beatles. I'll see you all very soon. Cheers.